the role that simulations play in how we govern the world is increasingly central, but they are not the only kind of model that governance uses. Legal models and the algorithmic if-then logic of a legal framework is another. And so too, models need not only be derived from the past, they can also anticipate the future. The object of legal governance may not only be people, it may also be the world itself, its ecosystems. That is, we must consider not only how existing governing models can administer, for example, a bioregion, as in the case of our next project, but how the governance of bioregions may emerge as a new sovereign layer within a wider framework. It's said that sovereignty is held not by who rules according to the law, but by he or she or it who may declare a state of emergency in which the law is suspended until further notice. At the same time, an emergency can also produce new forms of sovereignty that emerge from that crisis. The redrawing of maps of the former Soviet regions in the 1990s is one such example. So for the next project, Mera, we will see this dynamic at work in relation to two different models of the future. One of the future of the bioregion around the Caspian Sea. First, ecological forecasts that predict the collapse of ecological viability in the coming decades. And second, a plan for a preemptive jurisdiction that would address present and anticipated problems. The shift from the governance of the general will of humans to the governance of the material reality upon which life depends seems likely in our near future, for good or ill. It may work less because it would speak to the better angels of the participant cities than because it would better align their own actual self-interests of survival in relation to an underlying unnegotiable material reality of land, air, and sea that is finally indifferent to human narratives. Mera.
Hello again, my name is Evgenia. I'm a lawyer and project manager from Russia.
Hello, my name is Olga Cherniakova. I'm an architect from Russia.
Hi, my name is Antonia. I'm an urban management consultant from Canada.
Hi, my name is Nashin. I'm an architect from Indonesia.
My name is Nabi. I'm from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, and I'm an architect and urban designer. When we think of territories, we usually tend to imagine borders, lines that we draw on maps. Those lines, they react to geographies and topographies, political tensions, and sometimes political conflicts. Those lines both tend to include and exclude people and resources. But what is the role of borders and boundaries today in the face of ecological crises? Mera is trying to address three issues with the current situation.
So these are the fragmented jurisdiction and fragmented governance of ecological bodies whose systems often extend far beyond any one nation state, and this misalignment making it difficult to make coordinated decisions. And the next one is short-term thinking and microscales of human perception of time that often remain disconnected from not only the longer timescales of geological systems, but also their dynamic flows and processes. And finally, the misalignment of political, economic, and ecological interests that have fueled activities that have resulted in the overexploitation of natural resources.
As the ecological crisis begins to shed light on the limits of our current system, we are re-led to think how to reconceptualize our jurisdictional systems and administrations. Bioregionalism argues that human activity be coordinated with ecological and biological processes rather than political ones.
Typically, the boundary of the bioregion is defined around the watershed, which reveals the geographical limits of human communities and ecological systems. But what if the governance system would be based on the logics of the watershed and taking into account the ramifications of geological processes?
Mera proposes a new sovereign layer aligned to the logic of watershed. It speculates on the governance of the Caspian region, exploring its past, present, and potential futures. Mera.
Political boundaries and ecological systems follow distinct and often contradictory logics. Boundaries can contain resources, but also expel and ban. Other times, they are shaped by political conflict. Yet, a static line is ignored by the fluxes of a river over time. These inconsistencies can have high costs, the sea becoming a desert. The fate of the Aral Sea serves as a prime example of an ecological disaster caused by human activity as a result of fragmented jurisdictions, short-term thinking, and misaligned incentives. The pollution that once flowed through its rivers became exposed dust on the dried-up seabed carried by salinated dust storms affecting other regions. However, there are a number of successful examples that seek to manage cross-border ecological systems. The Danube River covers more than 10% of continental Europe, making it one of the most international river basins. The Danube River Protection Convention was signed by 14 basin countries and the European Union as contracting parties. It forms the legal instrument for cooperation and transboundary water management of the basin. It seeks to manage it as a natural geographical and hydrological unit, rather than through administrative boundaries. The topography of Bali creates a condition where farmers in upstream and downstream fields must coordinate the distribution of water in order to control pest populations. If water is withheld in upstream fields, pests from downstream can migrate upstream. To align social and ecological interests, administrative boundaries are based on water basins and follow seasonal logics of temporal governance. The Coral Triangle is the epicenter of marine life. Its diversity and economic value are threatened by climate change, urbanization, and overfishing, among other impacts. Coral Triangle Initiative is a multilateral partnership between the 6 countries formed to coherently address the urgent threats facing the ecosystem and align business interest to ecological concerns. Despite these practices of integrated water management models, they remain subordinate to administrative jurisdictions. Mera proposes a new sovereign system based on the logic of watersheds. The Mera boundary is defined by the extent of our watershed, which incorporates territories and cities from distinct administrative borders under its jurisdiction. The cities within the new jurisdiction form the Mera City Union to govern the new boundaries. Mera is granted the legal basis for sovereignty under an agreement signed by the Union. Mera is a feasible model for the governance of ecosystems prone to disputed resources and contested territory, for which Caspian Sea is an ideal scenario. Until 1991, the Caspian Sea was governed technically as a lake through bilateral agreements between the Soviet Union and Iran. After the fall of the Soviet Union, the Soviet portion was subdivided into 4 parts, and today the Caspian Sea is bordered by 5 distinct littoral states. The Caspian Sea shares the characteristics common to both sea and lake, and this ambiguity creates a number of economic, military, political, as well as environmental complications. If it was recognized as a lake, its surface and seabed would be equally divided between bordering countries. Under the classification of the Caspian Sea as a sea, each littoral state would have a territorial waters of up to 12 nautical miles, an exclusive economic zone set on median line, and a continental shelf. In 2018, a mutual agreement granted the Caspian Sea a special legal status, determining it as neither sea nor lake. Each of the 5 countries have been granted 15 miles of sovereign waters and an additional 10 miles of fishing space. Yet the division of the seabed is left for countries to agree on bilateral basis. The Caspian Sea has rich biodiversity with 125 species of marine and land mammals, 133 species of fish, 144 bird species, and 90% of the world's sturgeon fish stock. But human activity has had a regrettable role in its plummeting sea levels and the decline of its biodiversity.
Синера ходили, здесь Каспийский килька, сколько ее было. Сейчас вообще этого даже флота нет, потому что ее толком нет. То есть что-то на нее повлияло, тот же уровень. Добыча той же нефти. Сейчас же раньше добывала одна страна СССР, и то в одном месте, в Баку, грубо говоря. Сейчас 5 стран, и все добывают.
The Caspian Sea guards an abundance of resources, making it an area highly prone to friction. According to some estimates, it contains 19% of world oil reserves and 45% of world gas reserves. However, leasing grounds for extraction activities are incoherently managed. The Caspian Sea also hosts the highest concentration of petroleum companies in the world. These extraction activities impose a heavy burden of pollution, introducing heavy metals such as chromium, nickel, mercury, cadmium, and a number of other contaminants, slowly sedimenting on its shores. This is partly the result of misaligned interests and flawed logic. The watershed of the Caspian Sea is formed by 4 river basins, along with over 130 rivers flowing into it. The Volga River alone provides about 80% of the freshwater inflow into the Caspian Sea. Urban settlements surrounding the inflowing rivers introduce untreated waters along with agricultural pollutants, such as nitrogen and phosphorus, into the Caspian Sea. Furthermore, damification of the Volga River has drastically affected its sea levels, as well as biodiversity. Weak regulatory framework, outdated infrastructure, and lack of coordination prevent effective water management. The transboundary division of the Caspian Sea, over-extraction of natural resources, and the increasing levels of contamination bear close resemblance to the actions that turned Aral Sea into a desert. Caspian Mera introduces a new layer of sovereignty based on the Caspian Sea watershed. The area of the watershed is made up of 204 cities located among 7 distinct countries, amounting to a population of about 50 million people, and representing 14 ethnic groups. These cities form the Caspian Mera City Union, following internal negotiations as well as agreements with cities' respective national governments. Caspian Mera City Union establishes its governance body through legal agreements granting it sovereignty. Caspian governing body is responsible for enforcing legislation, implementing decisions and policies, ensuring that all agreements are respected, and overseeing inter-Mera affairs, as well as managing, allocating, and prioritizing Caspian Mera Fund. Petroleum companies with an interest in Caspian Sea are required to join Caspian Mera Oil and Gas Extraction Association, responsible for ensuring environmental standards in extraction activities. Licensing payments are collected by the Mera Fund. Different types of contracts are applicable for the extraction activity, including concession agreements, production sharing agreements, and service contracts. Oil and gas profits are shared between Caspian Mera and the oil companies, with pre-existing licenses can maintain their activities if they join the association. Extraction license is tied to water quality standards. Companies are collectively responsible for ensuring high environmental standards through their activities and managing the maintenance of the water quality. Water quality is monitored through in-situ monitoring and remote sensing technology with a set of specific indicators. Caspian Mera operates with a composite basket-based currency used as an electronic unit of account and manages its own fund. The Caspian Mera Fund is composed of taxes, fees, and other payments collected from petroleum companies operating within Caspia. The Mera Fund is redistributed to the cities based on their carbon footprint reductions and their energy efficiency indicators. These measures are differentiated according to baseline conditions. A portion of money gained by a city is then transferred to its respective national government. Emission reduction incentives encourage cities to adopt urban densification measures, which in turn frees land for conservation, agriculture, and for rewilding, as well as allocation of renewable energy infrastructure. The Caspian Mera implements incentives to stimulate a transition towards renewable energy, including tax exemptions for companies, CO2 emission reduction requirements, alternative energy use incentives, and renewable energy investments promotion. Mera residents enjoy free and unrestricted movements. Work permits for outer Mera residents are granted based on skills and labor priorities. A common visa policy is applied. Mera provides the identification cards issued by the resident city, valid and harmonized throughout the Mera. The citizens of nation-states overlapping with the Mera free movement zone can move freely within the Mera territory overlapping their nation-states. A Mera cannot be considered in isolation, but must account for impacts across the different Meras, as elements from one will always cross over to another. Meras offset and pay compensations for negative externalities imposed onto one another. Each Mera publicly displays its environmental data. Compensations are allocated to the Mera funds, thus building incentives for further reduction of negative externalities.